If you're a pancake fan, we have a recipe for you. I had the pleasure of trying souffle pancakes in Japan a few years back, and ever since then I've been wanting to recreate the experience. But almost all of the recipes I could find online didn't seem to work. There'd always be something off. So I spent some time to come up with my own recipe. Perhaps it's not traditional, but I'm pretty happy with the result. Could this be the tallest souffle pancake online? I don't know, but I think it's close. I've made this video a bit longer than usual because I think the detail is important. Well, without further ado, let's begin. So this is more or less a souffle in the classical sense, but it doesn't have a container to help support it. So we need something to help stabilize the batter. So for this, we're going to make an Italian meringue. So for now, we're just going to weigh out 100 grams of sugar and 33 grams of water in a small saucepan. I've seen a few other recipes that include Italian meringue, but it's never brought up to the correct temperature before mixing with the eggs. I've also seen other recipes that use cake flour or really thick cakey batters, and the result is nothing like you would find in one of these Japanese cafes. Sure, they're able to stand up on their own weight, but they're not delicate, they're not jiggly and fluffy and souffle-like. It's just a big, thick cake thing. So now we're going to start the base for our batter. Sift 50 grams of all-purpose flour, then add 2 egg yolks, and then add 15 grams of room temperature butter, then add 50 grams of whole milk. Some recipes call for baking powder, but I've tried it, and I find each time it has kind of a strange texture. Plus I find the more chemicals you add to food, the more you take away. So you want to make sure that you mix the base of this batter well. So I'd also like to mention that ingredients vary from country to country, and even the temperature inside your kitchen can make a difference. So rather than following the recipe to the letter, sometimes it's better to observe the technique and to watch closely of how things should look at certain stages in the recipe. So now that we've mixed our base, we're going to put it aside. So today we're going to use a buttered mold like this. And I've cut out some parchment paper that will fit inside and line the mold. And this should make it a bit easier to remove the pancake once it's cooked. So make sure that there's no air bubbles and that the parchment paper is clinging to the stainless steel. So we'll put this aside for now. So this is the sugar and water that we had weighed out earlier, so we're going to get that on the burner, and this is for our Italian meringue. And please pay attention, cooking with hot sugar can be very dangerous. So now we're going to start whipping our egg whites. I'm using 3 egg whites. I'm adding just a tiny bit of vinegar, and you want to make sure that your bowl and your whisk are completely clean, no grease, because that will definitely affect your meringue. In my opinion, you don't need a KitchenAid or any other mixing machine for this. This is pretty simple to do by hand. As a matter of fact, similar recipes in professional kitchens, we usually just whisk by hand like this. So the technique of your whisking with egg whites is actually more important than the torque or the speed. So a good technique is to have the bowl on its side like this. And you're not trying to break everything up, you're trying to just trap air bubbles into the egg. Think of it like that. So I've left in the whole clip of me making the egg whites. If you're already familiar with this technique, feel free to fast forward. I will leave a timestamp in the description for the next step. But if you're not familiar with making meringues or whipping egg whites, I'd recommend that you watch the next couple of minutes. If your hands get tired, you can always switch hands, but I find if you just go at a steady pace like this, you'll be okay. Also, something else to keep in mind, if you have your oven on or if your kitchen is particularly hot at the moment, try and find a cooler area in the kitchen to do this. So as you can see, the egg whites are frothing up quite nicely. Also, you might notice that we have about twice as much egg by volume as we did when we started. So we're trapping the air in the egg. And this is going to act as our leavening agent. Another thing to keep in mind is when you start making your meringue, when you start whisking, especially at this stage here, if you stop for an extended period, like a couple of minutes, it's possible that your egg will collapse. So you want to keep going. You can switch hands, but you must keep going. So while I'm doing this, I'm keeping an eye on the sugar solution on the stove. All you really want to do is have the sugar completely dissolved in the water at this point. You don't necessarily want it to be super hot. So you can see that our egg whites are stiffening up a little bit, becoming a bit more stable. So if you're one of those people that have tried making souffle pancakes, I don't know, 5-10 times, and it's annoying and you don't get it right, I think probably 9 times out of 10, it's because the egg whites weren't whipped properly. Or maybe you whipped them properly, but your bowl or your whisk, or even if your hands are not clean, just a tiny bit of grease gets in the egg whites, it will collapse. Maybe not completely, but it won't be as fluffy as you need it to be. So we're getting pretty close here. So the more stiff your egg whites are, the more stable they are, but they're not completely stable. Okay, so we're almost there. All this hard work is going to pay off. It's a great way to burn off calories before you eat the pancakes. Well, not really, but keep that in mind. Okay, so we're almost ready to add our sugar that we have on the stove. So we're going to get that started. So again, please be careful with the sugar. It's very easy to burn yourself, and it's quite an awful burn. I've had them before. But just pay attention and everything will be fine. So we need our sugar to come to a temperature of 118 Celsius or 244 degrees Fahrenheit. Once you have that temperature, we're going to whip it into our egg whites. So I'm just going to whip it a little bit more here before I add the sugar. But you also want to be careful not to over whip your eggs because they will separate. Okay, so now we're going to add our sugar. And you want to be really careful. The sugar is very hot. So now you're going to add the sugar gradually. And you don't necessarily want to pour it right on the whisk either. Going down the side of the bowl is a safer option. So you can already see a difference. It's getting much more thick, much more stable. The meringue is firming up a little bit. And we're keeping all of those micro bubbles of air trapped. I played around with a couple of different recipes for souffle pancakes, and this by far is the best way in my opinion. Okay, so we've added all of our sugar. We're going to keep whisking for a little bit longer. And that's looking good. Now it's time to add it to the base of our batter. So we're going to spoon the meringue into the base of our batter, 1 spoon at a time. The first spoon you can mix quickly, it doesn't really matter. Now for the second spoon, we're going to switch to a spatula. And we're going to fold this in. We're going to be a bit more gentle with it. Also, don't forget to make sure that your spatula and your spoon have been properly cleaned. If there's even one little dot of oil or grease, any kind of residue on your spoon or your spatula, it's quite possible that your meringue will collapse and it will affect your souffle pancakes. So continue folding the mix. So we want our batter to be as uniform as possible, but we don't want to mix it too much. The more you mix, the more of the air bubbles that you're popping. And the less air bubbles, the less it's going to rise. Okay, and now we're ready to cook our souffle pancakes. So I'm using a buttered Teflon pan. It's on medium heat, and I'm spooning the batter in just a little bit at a time. So this will depend on the size of the mold that you're using, but for the one that I'm using today, I'm leaving about 20% of room at the top for the souffle to expand. So now is a good time to add a tiny bit of water. I'm adding about a tablespoon or two, and this will convert into steam and help the souffle rise. So I'm going to cover it with a pot, and we're going to leave this cook for about 10 minutes. So after about 10 minutes, we're going to remove the pot. And you can see that it's risen a little bit. So I'm going to help this rise a little bit more and cook a bit more. I'm going to take a blowtorch and kind of work our way around the mold. In the various tests I had done, I had found that the blowtorch method is actually pretty good. I found by using the blowtorch, it cooked the sides of the pancake a bit more and made the pancake a bit stronger. So the center of the pancake, or the inside, can remain fluffy and jiggly, and the outside kind of helps keep the shape. Also be careful not to overdo it with the blowtorch because it is possible to burn the sides. So just do it for a couple of minutes, put a bit more water, and cover for another 10 minutes. So after 10 minutes, we're going to check on our pancake. I can see that the batter is almost cooked. It's not runny anymore. So now I'm going to use some tongs to flip the mold. So we're going to cover our pancake again for 20 minutes this time, and we're going to keep it at low heat, the lowest possible setting you have. So 20 minutes later, and our pancake is looking pretty good. If you're at this point and your pancake still looks a bit concave at the top, you should probably cook it for a little bit longer, like another 5-10 minutes. But ours is looking good. The bottom has some nice color on it, but it's not burnt. So we're almost ready to serve. I'm just going to give this one more blast with the blowtorch. And we're going to remove the mold. So I'm using some tongs and an offset spatula, and I'm just wedging it between the paper and the mold, and I'm just working it around. So the pancake is fully cooked, but you still want to be gentle when you're removing the pancake. So it's just coming loose now. And the moment of truth. It's looking pretty good so far. Next, we're going to gently remove the parchment paper. And there we are. Perfect souffle pancake. And of course, we have to give it the jiggle test. So in my opinion, it has just the right amount of color. It's kept its shape without being too dense. Light, airy, fluffy, jiggly. So we're now ready to plate. So feel free to garnish this with your favorite fruit, maple syrup of course, anything you want. So I'm going to give this a light dusting of powdered sugar. Then I'm going to add some raspberries and mandarin. It's just what I have on hand at the moment. Just going to plate these as nice as I can. Food just tastes better when it's presented nicely to you. I'm going to finish with a nice big piece of raspberry butter on top. I'll have another video on that very soon. And we have some flowers from the garden, some passion fruit, some mimosa. They're completely edible, but mostly for show. And no pancake would be complete without good quality Canadian maple syrup. While this is not the traditional method of making souffle pancakes, it's not exactly the same. You might find in most cafes in Japan, for example, but I'm pretty happy with the result. So we're just going to cut a slice out of this and see what it looks like inside. So it's light, fluffy, it has very pleasant texture, it's not too cake-like. It holds the butter and the syrup well, it's not too soggy. I'm pretty satisfied with the result. Well, thank you for watching. If you're trying to make souffle pancakes and you weren't having much luck, I hope my technique helps. We are a relatively new channel here, and if you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, please like and subscribe for further recipes and techniques. Happy cooking!